Alright, so now we're going to dive into this part B of connective tissue, and what we're going to first talk about is we're going to talk about fluid connective tissue. You need to understand that the only two things that fit into this category are going to be blood and lymphatic fluid. So what these are is, the name is very, very easy to remember. Fluid meaning that it is a very liquid, very watery ground substance, and it has all the cells and dissolved proteins floating within it or suspended within it. So looking at just a slide real quick, this is what you would be looking at in terms of blood. 3 different vantage points, but all of these red looking discs, those are red blood cells. All the tremendously large, or twice or 3 times the size, that are purple and have various color nuclei within them, those are white blood cells. So these are 3 very, very different white blood cells. What you also get within blood is you end up with, if you notice E here is pointing out what is called the plasma. Plasma, in just blood that you draw from the body, you really can't tell what it looks like. But if you get it, if you run it through blood through a centrifuge and split it up, you'll actually notice that plasma has a very yellow-looking appearance to it. Plasma is where the fluid is what makes up the fluid matrix of fluid connective tissue, and it's also where proteins are dissolved within. Another thing you will find in blood is you'll see platelets. If you look down here, see these little purplish dots down at the bottom right here. Those are in fact platelets. So you have red blood cells, white blood cells, proteins, all different things, nutrients dissolved within this fluid matrix that actually travels throughout the body. Okay. The third category of connective tissue is going to be called supporting connective tissue. What this is you have a very dense ground substance, very closely packed fibers. You're going to find that cartilage is in this. Cartilage is a very firm, gel-like substance. I don't like how they say firm gel, because most gels that you think of are very manipulative. Even though cartilage is slightly manipulative, it's very, very firm. So you would think of it kind of like the sole of a shoe. Even though you can push on it and it does have some give, it still has it's very, very firm. Things about cartilage you need to know: it has fibers embedded within it, and it is extremely avascular, meaning it doesn't have its own rich blood supply. Looking at this right here, you have cartilage. This is the knee. So the reason I've chosen knee is a lot of people have knee problems, especially with their meniscus cartilage, but you have cartilage here, 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 and here, and what it does is it protects from bone-to-bone contact. Nice smooth surface. It also absorbs some of the shock when you land on your legs from a jump or something like that. Couple different kinds of cartilage that you need to know. Everybody say hyaline. Hyaline cartilage is the most common type of cartilage found throughout the body. This is what forms between the bone joints. It also forms between the ribs and your sternum. So your sternum runs right here on your chest, and your ribs connect to it, and that is a cartilage connection right there. And it also supports the respiratory tract. So right here in your throat, you can feel your trachea. You will notice that it has ridges or bumps to it. Those ridges or bumps are actually hyaline cartilage that supports it and gives your trachea a nice firm tube that doesn't collapse, because if it collapses, you dead. If you take a look at hyaline cartilage, what you'll notice is you will see all these cells. I think the cells look like hoof prints of some kind, but what you have, these are chondrocytes, and they're usually, for some reason you see them in pairs, and then they're embedded into this firm substance here, and what it is fibers that are very densely packed together, but most of it is collagen fibers. So in hyaline cartilage, when you look at it, you will see the chondrocytes, or cartilage cells, embedded in what looks like a colored gel substance, and you really can't distinguish a whole lot of the fibers. That's a big thing about hyaline cartilage. Then you have what is called elastic cartilage. Elastic cartilage, just think about what it means to have the property of elasticity, but rubber bands are elastic, meaning you can stretch them, and when you release them, they go back to their original shape. This is what elastic cartilage does. It's very resilient, very flexible. It makes up the external flaps of your ears. Your epiglottis. Your epiglottis is essentially the lid over your trachea. So when you swallow liquids or food or something like that, it slams shut over the top of your trachea, so food doesn't get down into your trachea and you choke to death. If you'll notice about elastic cartilage, and this is the cartilage of the external ear, you can actually distinguish the fibers running throughout there. It looks kind of a stringy gel with the chondrocytes, like these are all the chondrocytes embedded within there. So if you're trying to differentiate between elastic cartilage and hyaline cartilage, solely look at, can I see a bunch of stringy fibers running throughout it with the chondrocytes embedded in there? If you can, elastic cartilage. Okay. Then you have what is called fibrocartilage. This is extremely durable. It's extremely tough. It does not have as much give. When it tears or it breaks, you definitively notice. But the most common example is all the discs between each of your vertebrae. They allow your vertebrae bones to be mobile without having bone-to-bone contact, but they also absorb a tremendous amount of shock, and they're resilient in protecting the spinal cord itself. If you look at fibrocartilage looks very, very fibrous. You can see the chondrocytes embedded within. There's not as many chondrocytes, and all the fibers run in one parallel direction. Okay. The next category is going to be bone. We're not going to get into super detail on this because we have an entire unit over the skeletal system, and when we'll get into more detail about actual skeletal tissue or bone tissue. But what you need to understand, it has a system to it, and it's a repeating system throughout the entire tissue, and what they call that, they're called osteons. So you see this giant circle here that looks like a tree cut in half with all the rings of the tree. This entire thing here, and also this one right here, that is called an osteon. An osteon is composed of several different components. For example, this dark in the middle circle is called the central canal or the Haversian canal. You actually have blood vessels and nerves that run in and out of those Haversian canals right here, which supply nutrients to the tissue. You'll notice that it forms rings. The rings that it forms, those are called lamellae. That's where you get that that dense, hard feeling of bone that people associate with rocks, because most of it is calcified or minerals of calcium and phosphorus. You'll notice you also have these little dark circles that form around the rings. They are embedded within the lamellae. Those actually are where the bone cells or osteocytes are contained. Those are called lacunae. And you'll see all these little streaking lines that interconnect between all the different lacunae where the osteocytes are and the central canal. Those are called canaliculi. They actually have a direct contact with the Haversian or central canal for distribution of nutrients throughout the entire thing. This system of osteon repeats all throughout the bone tissue. So here's just a nice little graphic organizer separating and distinguishing all the differences between the three types of connective tissue. You have connective tissue proper, which you'll have your loose or areolar, and then you have your dense connective tissue. You have fluid connective tissue, blood and lymph, and then you have supporting connective tissue, which is going to be cartilage and bone. Entrance card question number 4. Here we go. A student was absent from class when the connective tissue microscope lab was completed. That's unfortunate. You have to describe the difference between connective tissue proper, fluid connective tissue, and supporting connective tissue so that they can properly identify the microscope slides. Write your description on your entrance card, or basically how would you describe the difference between those three things to the absent student.